Welcome to another film hashtag Friday Fun edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown. You know it's me. You can follow your Shirley on Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow McKenna McGee on the Twitter, executes again on IG.
Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast. We're located at Ward Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give Ward Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinion during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comments section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you. Where you decide to troll and or do something funny, silly, dumb, or stupid, I've given LaKeena full powers to give you Dumbo's Bill and be a boot.
Toodles.
But before we begin, shout out to our live game. That's LIVE Live Entertainment game that's checking us out right now on our Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages at 12:21 p.m. Central Standard Time. But as always, much love to the replay game. Shout out to the replay game that's also checking us out right now or on Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube pages. Don't you ever forget our motto, where we talk sports, music, or entertainment. We will always provide.
We'll provide you with some of the best here on Second City Sports as we will talk MLB trade deadline with our buddy Adrian Altman from Cubs Insider. Did the Cubs make enough moves? Should they make a bigger move? We'll see. The White Sox do trade Adrian Houser, but maybe could have done more moves. We'll talk about that. Of course, some NFL news as 2-star players want out of their squads. And there was a football game yesterday. Did you watch? And there was some, the NFL actually also debuted some interesting new technology advancements. So we'll talk about that as well. We'll also have sports media news as CBS announces their NFL announcing crews for this season with some big changes at the top. We'll talk about that and other stuff as well. But first, of course, we didn't get a chance to talk about when this news happened earlier this week, but Ryne Sandberg, the legend for the Cubs, passed away after a long bout with prostate cancer after his cancer came back last December. We've heard various reports. Of course, Jed Hoyer, we'll talk about him after the break with Evan. He got a new contract extension. But the way, we saw John Lester and Kerry Wood a couple of weekends ago wearing Sandberg jerseys. And you had, some other former teammates and players sort of say things about it. So you kind of knew that something was happening. Sadly, it did. Like I said, we got the word Thursday night, Wednesday night, I should say. But it's Monday night, I should say. But it's still tough. Still trying to process. He was a 10-time All-Star. Of course, won NL MVP back in '84. Was a 9-time Gold Glove winner, 7-time Silver Slugger Award winner. 2,386 hits, 282 home runs, 344 stolen bases, 1,318 runs. And, of course, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame back in '05. And I actually saw his speech this week just to kind of bring up some memories there. And I remember when he first retired, I was actually getting ready to start school. And he didn't have a good season that season. And of course, he came back and actually did even better, of course, cement his Hall of Fame status. But this is a tough one, Sid, because before Michael Jordan, and of course Walter Payton was starting to establish himself as that number Cubs legend. But when Rhino came in from Philadelphia, Dallas Green, of course, did that trade. He kind of sort of epitomized the quiet superstar, if you will. He was very he was very stoic. He wasn't, didn't really talk to the media too much. But we for those who know, he went through a messy divorce. That's why he retired the first time. But in the second marriage, of course, he became more open. His personality started showing, and we'll talk about some of the other stuff. But Sid, I'll let you have the floor first. I know you're a Sox fan, but very classy Sox fans. Of course, President Barack Obama, who's also a Sox fan, had a very classy posts. I know that during the White Sox series with the Phillies, they also posted a really nice tribute to Rhino as well. So, what are your thoughts and what are your memories of Rhino?
Of course, we were both kids of the '80s, and of course, we watched Ryne Sandberg on WGN back in the day. As you mentioned, he wasn't a me first guy pointing his finger at himself and throwing others under the bus. He was not that guy. He was the guy that went out there and did his job. Always had respect for him. He wasn't the world's athletic player, but he tried his best, and he um, gave his best to his teammates and to the fans. And he helped put the Cubs on the map, especially with that '84 team. Of course, we know about the quote unquote Sandberg game back in June in '84 against the Cardinals with those 2 home runs, in which cemented him onto the national stage, which led him to that '84 MVP season. Of course, he did it again in '89, helping that team make it to the playoffs. So, of course, it was disappointing for them, for the Cubs, and for him not to play in the World Series. But he was one of the best second basemen I ever saw, and I always had respect for him. He gave it all he had. As you mentioned, he was first class to the team, to his teammates, and to the fans, and that's where he's going to be remembered by. Of course, you mentioned about the Hall of Fame speech back in '05. Many thought back then, even to this day, that speech was partially a point, the finger being pointed at Sammy Sosa about doing it right and carrying yourself with respect and humility, and that's what he did. He lived it out every day of his life. You mentioned with his family off the field. I remember that too. But like you said, he came back and finished his career strong the way he wanted it to. So that just cement to what kind of person he was, not only on but off the field as well.
You listen to Second City Sports on Sports Chicago. LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you as we remember Baseball Hall of Famer Ryne Sandberg, and listening to some of his former teammates. Sean Dunston, especially if you heard him on both Marquee Sports and MLB Network, you can tell, you can tell his face. He has been crying in the tears, and he shared that that Rhino wanted to talk to him and to Mark Grace. They were part of that great infield squad for a couple years back in the late '80s and it's the early '90s, and it was sort of like they how became how close they became. And when Andre Dawson, of course, who won the MVP back in '87, he came in. If you heard some of his comments, you could tell he was hurt as well. He's been hurt as well, of course, and he didn't really approach him too much. And you could tell like just the hurt that they felt. I know. Mark Grace hasn't done a lot of interviews yet, which I can't say I blame him because I know they've been close for many years, but it's sort of like the impact that Rhino had on not just in baseball, but just for the type of guy he was. And you see, his statue. Of course, he had a statue outside Wrigley earlier this season, and Craig Counsell, to his credit, wanted the current Cubs to be in the area for the Valley, so that they can kind of see like this is where you want to be. Guy that was pure, not just talent but also pure class as well. And to the Cubs' credit, shout out to them. They're going to be wearing a patch. They're going to have a little emblem outside, at Wrigley. For the rest of the season, they're going to the players going to wear patches for the rest of the season as well. So very classy move. I saw Craig Kenny, of course, who's a president of business operation. You saw the tears, coming out during the radiothon over at 6 after the score yesterday. Like I said, you can tell that the impact that Rhino had, like I said, both on and off the field. It was just amazing.
And also to the Cubs, every Cubs player will be wearing a blank number 23 Ryne Sandberg jersey during Saturday's game tomorrow against the Baltimore Orioles in the game 2 of that series. Yours truly is supposed to be out there, so we'll see if I can get out there for that. We talk about sports all the time, LaKeena, us being passionate fans and observers. One of the reasons why we love sports, not just for the competition off the field, but it's the chemistry, it's the friendships that you build away from the playing field. And you hear athletes all the time, Michael Jordan, even though he was living in a different world. You hear Frank Thomas doing his playing days. He's like, it's about the chemistry, the friendships, and you're together more with your teammates than you are with your immediate family. So those elements are important as well, and that's why you hear all the time when you hear championship teams celebrating at the end. What was the key to your success besides your talent and executing what the coaches give you? Well, it's about what we did off the field, the trips that they took to get away from everything. It's the friendships, it's the relationships, it's that special bond you have as men, as brothers. And not to exclude women's sports, but you get the point. But it's a special bond that you have between your teammates, things that you could share that you can't share with anybody else. And not saying you cannot have that in other forms of jobs in other areas of life, but in sports, you're bonded together as one for a common cause. You got to go out there and do your job, and it's just nothing like it. And that's one of many reasons why we love sports so much.
Yeah, he was definitely that guy that kind of makes you reason why he loved you love sports. And I said it on Twitter too. I mean, he was one of my first sports idols. I mean, just the kind of guy that didn't show a lot of, like you said, he didn't show a lot of brass. He didn't talk. He kind of let his play do the talking. And even though, he didn't have the monster numbers, but his defense was top notch. He's one of the best second basemen in all of baseball. Everybody during that era, we've heard guys said in this last few days that he was the kind of guy that he was a competitor, but didn't really had that killer instinct. He kind of just let his bat do the talking. So I think that's what that's kind of what sports used to be back in those days. So there was no social media, none of that stuff. He kind of just had to when you saw the games on, especially if you were outside Chicago, I saw him on WGN. That's how he kind of became that figure. So,
like I said before, he helped put the Cubs on the map, not just locally but nationally as well. Not just with his play, but with those two division winning teams in '84 and '89. And we talk about Steve Stone, we talk about Harry Carey, and some of the other players on the team. But Ryne Sandberg, what he meant on and off the field for the Cubs, if it wasn't for his presence, none of this would be possible today.
We're going to take a really quick break, of course. We'll talk MLB trade deadline with our buddy Evan Altman. I'm sure he's also going to have some memories of Rhino as well. And other baseball happenings, too. LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. Baseball talk. More baseball talk coming up right after this.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Chi. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
Got it done here. Ouch! And we're gonna make sure you live this time. Ouch! You're not gonna get me this time.
Ow, Manny!
Oops! Let's try an easy one.
Every day, we take steps to keep the people we love safe, but some health risks are easy to miss. Ticks hiding in the yard can spread germs, like the ones that cause Lyme disease. Mice searching for food can spread bacteria that makes us sick. Mosquitoes lay eggs in standing water and can spread West Nile virus and more. Cockroaches are drawn to water in the home, leaving behind allergens that can trigger asthma attacks. Common pests can threaten our health. Learn how to protect your family at pestworld.org.
Hey, this is Corey Maggette, and I listen to Sean and Maya on the morning show.
Welcome back to the hashtag Friday Fun edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded and real live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's LaKeena. You can follow yours surely on the Twitter, X, in the IG, and SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow McGee on the Twitter, X, again, IG.
If you have any questions or comments regarding the Chicago Cubs or the rest of Major League Baseball for this segment only with our very special guest, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments to the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
Okay, so we're always happy to have him on with us. He's our buddy from Cubs Insider. He's the one, the only, the super cool Mr. Evan Altman. Evan, how are you?
Doing well, doing better after that intro. Flattery is always the best way to my heart, so we're good.
Oh, cool. Now, we'll take. We'll get this out the way first, and we'll talk baseball here. What are your memories of Ryne Sandberg?
Oh man, yeah. So I mean, I was an '80s kid, right? So really, it was like, and I grew up in the country, so we didn't have that many options for television and radio and anything anyway. So WGN, when all the regular networks were showing soap operas, WGN had like What's Happening and Different Strokes and all that stuff during the like in the mornings and early afternoon, and then you go right into the Cubs game. So I mean, I have distinct memories of that. Either and my dad was a farmer, so we'd either be out in the fields, and what else are you going to listen to? Well, you got either news radio or the Cubs are on. And if you're watching TV, like I said, it's either soap operas or the Cubs are on, and some really cool sitcoms that are still like to this day. Those are some of my best memories. But I mean, watching the Cubs come up, with Sandberg in '84 in particular, made enough of an impression. I mean, I eventually named my son Ryne. He's almost 17 now. And so to me, at 46, to have a son who's 30 years younger, who never got to see the man play other than highlights, right? But he was just as devastated when he heard the news because he's grown up as a Cubs fan. Obviously, sharing the same name means a lot to him. My brother and I went to see when his jersey was retired. My son and I went when his statue was unveiled. And so he's been this kind of big figure in my life and that of my son as well, even if it's just from highlights. But my son's had a chance to meet him a couple of times and went to a little baseball camp that he ran here at one point. And I think one of the things we've seen and what stood out to me the whole time is this is one of the most consistent, we talk about his athletic performance. You talk about 9 straight Gold Gloves. You talk about 7 Silver Sluggers, 10 straight All-Star appearances. Just a consummate professional on the field, but everything he did off the field, you've never heard anyone say a negative thing about Ryne Sandberg, the individual, right? We talk about all the accolades and the stats, but whether it's, you have, again, the Brewers honored him. The Yankees honored him with a moment of silence. Like, that to me, when other teams and other fans recognize someone, again, not just for their greatness on the field, but the kind of person they were and the way they carried themselves. And that's kind of the thing to me is so often, for one reason or another, we might have athletes that aren't always the best role models, the best examples. And this is someone who I think to a man and woman, everyone could look at and say, that's the kind of guy I'd like to be like myself, or I'd like my kid to grow up kind of idolizing. And those are the things that'll stick with me the most, is just having that opportunity to have met him a few times and have him come across as exactly as genuine, exactly as humble as what you've seen in interviews and on TV. So the world, not just the Cubs, not just the Cubs fans, but I think the baseball world and even beyond, lost an incredible luminary. But my hope is that his example will continue to show forth, right, for a lot of us who got to see him or meet him, and we can all try to take something away from that. So hopefully the world's a little bit of a better place, than he left it that way.
You mentioned about being 80s baby. All three of us are 80s babies in here, and you brought up 84, and of course that particular one Saturday afternoon in hot June at Wrigley against the St.
Mhm.
Louis Cardinals, where he had 2 home runs, what brought him into national prominence. Talk to us about your memories of your first memories of that game, and what did you think about the documentary that the Cubs did a few years ago about that fateful day back in '84?
Yeah, it's kind of, I was just old enough at that point to start being cognizant of what was going on, and to know that there was something a little bit different about it than maybe what had come before, right? So and I'm too young to remember when he first came over. So I was about 5-ish, right, just a little older than 5 when the game happened. So my memories are just more of them being so much more prominent, seeing them, hearing them in the news more, seeing more of a buzz around the ballpark, that sort of thing. But I think the Cubs have done a really tremendous job in leaning into that. Well, I think especially with Marquee, when Marquee Sports Network got fired up, they've done such a great job of producing these little, whether it be hour-long documentaries, whether it be, I mean, they had, and obviously everyone kind of knew for a while that Sandberg's health was failing. And so that night that he passed, when that was announced, they already had like an 11 or 12-minute little mini documentary kind of celebrating his legacy. So I applaud them for doing that and giving us all a chance. As much as like I'm sitting there I watched it kind of through double vision, because somebody was cutting onions next to me and it was dusty and what have you. But I think that's what's so cool is that we don't have WGN anymore. And I heard you all talking about that a little bit right before the break. And that was what brought so many fans, whether it's to the Cubs or the Braves or TBS, and so many. And with that game, again, the Sandberg game being kind of the NBC game of the week, right? We didn't have a world, and none of us grew up in that, where you could just watch whatever game you wanted, whenever you wanted, or watch a replay. What? Like, you're not rerunning baseball games. And so I think now with Marquee and then putting that stuff on YouTube and having access to that for kids, and all of us adults as well, right? We can go and relive those memories at the drop of a hat. We don't have to kind of wait for a special time. So that's been the coolest thing to me, is to have access to those things, to kind of to bring your memories back without even having to try, right? I can push a button on my TV and watch it. And that to me is pretty cool. But at the same time, I don't want to be the old man, but there is something special. There was more special about that appointment viewing, to where, like, if you didn't see it live, you weren't going to see it. Maybe you'd catch a highlight on the 9:00 news or the 10. I could watch WGN at 9 or at noon the next day, and I'd see a couple plays. But there is that man, you had to be there kind of a feel, and that part I'll miss. But I do love, I said, just being there and seeing all the fans at the statue and seeing the memorials that have kind of built up around that there, and just see how many people were touched by this. And again, sometimes I think it's so easy to look at these multi-million-dollar athletes and what they get paid now and kind of separate them. Like they don't seem like normal people. And Rhino, I think, never, and a lot of those guys from again, our childhood, felt a little bit more relatable at the time to me. And maybe that's just because I'm a child and now I'm grown up and it looks different, but that's the part I'll take away.
Absolutely. Let's talk about these current Cubs. Of course, the trade deadline just passed yesterday. They got, Cubs made some minor moves. Andrew Kittredge, that they got who they'll be playing, this weekend, the Orioles. Mike Soroka. Now he's gonna get the start tonight, I believe. I got Willie Castro from the Twins, who is very versatile, who can play pretty much anywhere in the infield. I'm gonna ask you, what grade would you give them? But do you think they should have done more? Do you think was this probably pretty much what you thought they would do? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because when you look at it going in, right, when we kind of strip away the context a little bit, it was evident for a while that they needed help in the starting rotation, right? Whether it's from injuries or performance, what have you. But I think also you look at where the market broke in terms of there were a few guys who were getting, you look at Shane Bieber from the Guardians, for instance, gets traded to the Blue Jays for a fairly high level pitching prospect. And this is a guy who's recovering from Tommy John surgery, who's just still pitching in Double-A on a rehab stint, and he's getting a pretty decent haul for that. We saw the same thing with some other guys. And I mean, the Cubs were looking for controllable starters, but based on some of what's out there and some of our reporting that we had out earlier today, for all those of you talking about a Joe Ryan, a Mackenzie Gore, Edward Cabrera, Sandy Alcantara from the Marlins, the ask was including not just Owen Casey, the Cubs' number one prospect, but also Cade Horton, who's one of their top young pitchers, and Matt Shaw, who's their third baseman and had been their top prospect before he was promoted. So when you're talking about the ask that it would have taken to get the type of player who really felt like a difference maker at the top of the rotation, it makes sense they didn't go there. But I know a lot of people are frustrated by, and I'm a little bit perplexed by the idea that they couldn't find the way to a Merrill Kelly. I am super, super low on Adrian Houser, who got traded from the Sox to the Rays. I don't buy, his small sample that he's doing as well as he is, but that's another guy who can bolster it. However, I feel like Soroka is a guy who can come in and his numbers have not looked good in DC, but you put a better defense behind him, you give him a reason to play for an actual contender. And I think some of those things could maybe even out a little bit. So do I feel like they did enough? No, it's a little frustrating. At the same time, I think you are looking at a better team with Willie Castro gives them a much stronger bench, and the pitching depth got better. And let's not forget, they're also expecting reinforcements. Jameson Taillon will be back off the IL before too long. Javier Assad's coming back. Porter Hodge is coming back. And so given the length of time those guys have been out, they almost feel like additions as well. So hard to fault Hoyer too much, other than just maybe not getting that one more depth piece for the rotation.
You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena hanging out here with us. We talked to our good buddy Evan Altman from CubsInsider.com discussing the Northsiders in the MLB trade deadline. Evan, you brought up the starting rotation. As of right now, assuming this falls in line, Shota Imanaga is number one. Matthew Boyd, who became an all-star this year, is your number two. Jameson Taillon, if he comes back from injury and stays healthy, he'll be your number three if the playoffs would start today. Shota has looked terrible in his last 2 or 3 starts, especially in that first inning. Of course, 1 week ago tonight, Shota got drilled by my White Sox. How worried are you about Shota Imanaga? Do you think he can get his problems corrected before the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. He looked a lot better the last time out. Kind of looked like one of those. We saw that happen once or twice last year as well. The velocity dipped a little bit. He had an even worse, and I can't remember now for the life of me who he's pitching against, but an even worse game at one point last year with similar consequences to or similar kind of byproducts of that White Sox game where we saw the velo down. The command was really failing him, and as a strong control command pitcher who doesn't walk that many people. And we saw that earlier in the year too, right? He struggled with that a little bit more, righted the ship, spent some time on the IL. So I think we saw him, definitely was a lot better the last time out. I think he's got the ability to get after it a little bit and kind of improve upon that. It's the troublesome part again is that rotation, and Cade Horton, I think is a strong candidate for it, depending on how he continues through the rest of the second half. But, I don't distrust them so much as it is tough when you do look and stack up whoever their top three would be against any other postseason team's top three. And that's an area where I think the Cubs do come up a little bit short, especially when you talk about as much as I love Imanaga and he is able to get those shutdown innings and games, he's always going to be a fly ball pitcher. And we know that in the postseason, teams that out-homer their opponents are going to win more often than not because offense is at a premium, the pitching is better, and you're not going to be able to string together a bunch of hits and walks in most cases. So those home runs are big. Imanaga being a fly ball pitcher, depending on the ballpark, could be a pretty tough combination there. So I'm not concerned with him for the regular season so much as I am when you really get down to it. Pitching in the playoffs is a different animal.
Yeah, very different. Now, PCA, we know all his numbers. We know what he's done this year. He struggled a little bit the last few weeks. So is he still kind of in that discussion for an LMVP?
Yeah, I think well, and part of that could be by default too, right? We saw Shohei Ohtani come off the mound, really zooed a couple of pitches out there, didn't look good. I haven't seen much from that, but certainly I think even if he comes out of that just fine, is how tight do the Dodgers play that with him going forward? and whether it's keeping him off the mound, keeping him out of a few more games. But I think, again, a lot of it comes down to what the Cubs do, right? We see so often, not only is it a popularity contest, like the numbers obviously play, right? But when you can go into the season, before he's even swung a bat, that Ohtani is the odds-on favorite, regardless of what anybody else does. That makes it a little bit tougher. I do think, though, we're going to need to see PCA put up some big numbers. I mean, we're talking it's probably going to have to end up being 40-40 club for him, in order to really bring that out and kind of continue. He's going to have, hey, we talked about the Sandberg game earlier, right? What is that MVP moment? What is the game or the play, the event that he kind of triggers? And clearly he's done a great job, right? We heard his name being chanted in Tokyo. We hear it at opposing ballparks. So that's big, but what happens to really capture the imagination? And I think if he's able to kind of have that signature moment, that can help put him over the top, again, provided he hits some big numbers as well down the stretch.
Speaking of another impact player in that lineup, Evan, let's talk about Michael Busch. Of course, many people, including LaKeena, made the case for Michael Busch. He made a late push to try to get on the NL All-Star team. Obviously, he came up short, but ever since Craig Counsell put him at the leadoff spot, he's been killing it, as the kids would say. And of course, another example that was this past Wednesday in the series finale at Milwaukee. He led off the game with a home run first pitch off of Freddie Peralta. Talk to us about Michael Busch. What do you expect from him for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I love what he's been doing. He's been really aggressive when he's put in the top of the lineup there. When he's leading off games, we've seen him hit a couple of home runs. The other day, again, first pitch of the game, just jumping on that and getting after it. And I think, a lot of people, understandably so, would like to see him in there a little bit more frequently. He does not. So today's game, the Cubs are facing a lefty, and so you've got Busch down in the order a little bit more, and Nico Hoerner's leading off. There were a lot of games in which Busch was not playing at all against those tough lefty starters. And, a lot of people lament that and say, well, but look at his numbers. He has to. And then when you break down the splits a little bit more, you're like, well, the numbers are as good as they are because he's been protected against a few of those lefties and has really been able to feast against right-handed pitching. Now, eventually those things can come around, right? But I think the Cubs and Craig Counsell have done a really good job of, I don't want to say protecting him. That makes it sound like he needs to be kind of coddled. I don't think that's the case at all, but they've done a good job of putting him in advantageous situations, right, to where he can really shine to his best. And then there are times, we will see him every once in a while against lefties, maybe for a certain facet of their game. Maybe they're more reverse split guys or something like that. But you have to love what he's doing. I mean, he coming over kind of unheralded. He was blocked there in L.A. by Freddie Freeman, and all he's done is go out and, the All-Star snub was pretty obvious. The guy pretty much led all first basemen in almost every offensive category. I think other than Alonso, maybe with home runs, but he's playing Gold Glove level defense over at first. And when do you ever hear about him making waves? You look at a Rafael Devers who ends up getting traded because he's so disgruntled because the Red Sox are asking him to play in different spots or to kind of take a different role. Busch just goes about his business. Okay, there's a lefty, I got to sit. No problem. I'm one of the best hitters on the team. I am willing to put up with that, deal with it. And maybe there's some conversations behind the scenes, of course, but I think that's the big thing. He's not making any waves. He goes in there and he does his job when he's in. And when he's not, he bides his time. And then generally he's going to come back in and pinch hit or serve as a defensive replacement. He's done everything the Cubs could possibly ask for. So when you talk about a team that's been really kind of starving at that position since Anthony Rizzo for those couple of years in between, he's come in and done even better than I think anybody could have expected. So good on him for everything he's done.
Now, Kyle Tucker, of course, he's been, has struggled a little bit, in the last few weeks as well. And I know some Cubs fans are worried, whether or not, that he kind of gave up a lot for a rental. But Jeff Passan from ESPN was on the Score yesterday, late last night, and said that the Cubs are the favorites to re-sign him. Now, take that for however you want to. So what do you think is going to happen with Tucker?
Yeah, it's so tough, right? Because it felt like one of those where, they don't make that trade unless, and I feel like we see it a lot more in the NBA because of the salary structure, but there's so many times, so I don't want to go too far with this example, but I look at let's go with the Pacers trading for Pascal Siakam a couple years ago. And they did that knowing they'd be able to sign him to a max deal, right? So baseball's a little bit different because of the structure. But I think there is a feeling around that, like, hey, if we can get this guy in here, even if we don't get to sign him immediately, we can bring him in, let him see baseball and just overall the summer in Chicago. So baseball at Wrigley Field in the summer is really unmatched. Chicago might be the best summer city in the country, if not the world, right? I mean, there's just no better place on earth than Chicago in the summer. And being able to experience that on a contending team, I think is one of those things that as long as then they're able, obviously they're going to have to pony up the money, right? It's not like they're going to just be able to spend half of what another team would. But I do think they stand in the catbird seat right now when it comes to being able to ink him to a new deal, just because he's been able to see what that is. Can you get that same thing somewhere else? Are you willing to risk, the comfort and the contention that you've been able to experience for this summer somewhere else? So as long as they're willing to pay up, and we'll see if Tom Ricketts is feeling some of this. And I guess there's the other thing too, right? I'll put it on that. They're getting the All-Star game in 2027 at Wrigley Field now. But again, hopefully the CBA expires again at the 2026 season. So hopefully there's baseball being played at that point. But having a superstar, being able to promote and make sure there's this kind of leader face of the franchise, along with PCA, you get a couple guys like that, and that really turns the event into, no pun intended, a marquee deal for them for much more than just a summer.
We're heading down the home stretch with our guy Evan Altman from Cubs Insider right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid LaKeena here with you talking Chicago Cubs baseball. Evan, you brought up Jed Hoyer. Of course, he got that contract extension prior to the All-Star break. Now, for conversation purposes only, assume that they signed Kyle Tucker. You hear the old phrase, you can't in professional sports, you cannot keep everybody happy. If Kyle Tucker is signed somehow this offseason, what are the chances for guys like Seiya Suzuki, who was another All-Star snub this year, or PCA, who's having a breakout year? Can Tom Ricketts find the money to keep both those guys, or does he? Do they keep PCA and perhaps let Seiya Suzuki go?
Yeah, I mean, I think outside of Tucker, certainly with his expiring contract, I think PCA has to be the next guy up in terms of your priority. And that cuts a couple different ways, because on one hand, this is a potential superstar for a decade or more to come that you'd love to keep in a Cubs uniform. On the other hand, he's also under control under his rookie deal for so much longer that there's not that impetus to rush. You've got him. But then back to the other hand, the earlier you can sign him, the more of a discount you're going to be able to get on those services, right? By buying out those pre-arbitration years and the arbitration years, paying a little bit more than he would otherwise earn. And then you get a discount on some of those back-end years. But I do think those are the top two, with Suzuki or even Ian Happ, right, who will have another year left. I think those kind of fall into the background a little bit, and they may look at that, especially with Owen Casey coming up, as we noted earlier, Kevin Alcantara coming up through the system as a really strong outfielder. I do think they would rather pay one or two guys really, really big money and then find a way to let those prospects come up and kind of offset that cost on those cheap rookie deals. So that's one of the things I think it's Tucker 1A and PCA 1B. And after that, I think they're looking at letting the prospects come up and take over pretty soon.
Last question from me, Evan. Of course, the rest of the MLB trades, I'll just do some of them. Carlos Correa goes back to the Astros. The Mariners get Eugenio Suarez and also Shane Bieber as well. The Yankees get David Bednar and also Ryan McMahon early last week. The Phillies get their closer, looks like a Johan Duran from the Twins. The Twins are very busy getting rid of pretty much everybody. Were there some trades that you like? Were there some trades that you dislike? Were there some trades that just left you scratching your head?
Yeah, I was really kind of surprised by how San Diego went about their business out there, because it felt like they were just picking up player after player. Swung the deal to pick up a couple pitchers from the A's, who gave up their top prospect, number 3 overall prospect in baseball, to pick up Mason Miller, who's was a sought after closer, not having a great season this year, and then JP Sears, which then led everybody to believe, oh, well, hey, they're going to move Robert Suarez and Dylan Cease, who have been rumored since the start of the season as potential trade bait. And yet they somehow then managed to keep all those guys. And this is a team that's said and acted as though they were trying to trim salaries. So that struck me as very odd that they couldn't kind of make something else work. I thought the Correa deal going back to Houston, Suarez going back to Seattle, those were really kind of odd to me. Again, I definitely didn't see those coming, but I was kind of surprised at some of who was selling, who was buying. But like you said, the Twins seem to really want to unload everybody. Baltimore unloaded a bunch of players. It's going to be very interesting to see this weekend how they field the team against the Cubs, because they started moving, O'Hearn's gone and Cedric Mullins and some of these other guys. So, and then I guess the weird one for me, the last one is one of the Cubs pickups. They got Taylor Rogers, the twin brother of Tyler, who both Rogers brothers got traded on Wednesday, with Taylor going from Cincinnati to Pittsburgh as part of the Key Brian Hayes deal. And the very next day, the Cubs make a trade with the Pirates to acquire Rogers. So the guy has been employed by 3 National League Central teams in the space of about 24 hours, which is you don't see that too often, kind of getting flipped like that. So I thought it was kind of funny, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, definitely an odd deadline for a number of reasons for me.
All right, this has been Evan Altman, the head man in charge at Cubs Insider and CubsInsider.com. Evan, thanks for joining us and taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. But before you go, where can people catch your work online?
Absolutely. Just check me out. Again, you can go to CubsInsider.com. You want to check me out on X, it's at @DEvanAltman. Same thing on Blue Sky, and we're out there on Facebook. If you search Cubs Insider, we're there as well. So wherever you need me, I'll try to be there.
All right, Evan, it's been so much fun as always. We'll definitely have you back on, perhaps maybe, hopefully previewing the Cubs playoff run. So, so continue the great success and the great work, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Evan.
No problem. All right, that was Mr. Evan Altman from CubsInsider.com. Say real quick before we close up shop for the first hour, let's do the MLB schedule for this weekend. You got Atlanta and Cincinnati playing right now as we speak. Cincinnati's up early right now. Of course, Baltimore with pretty much everybody gone. We'll just see what kind of, like Evan said, we'll see what kind of team they field against the Cubs this weekend. Yeah. Detroit and Philadelphia, perhaps a potential World Series preview.
It could be. It could be.
We'll see. Milwaukee and the Nationals. That's going to be on Apple TV Plus. The first game later today, I should say. Kansas City and Toronto. You got Boston hosting Houston. That game will also be on Apple TV Plus. Minnesota and Cleveland. The Yankees and the Marlins and the Giants and the Mets on MLB Network.
Finishing out your weekend schedule, the LA Dodgers will face the Tampa Bay Rays in Florida. Pittsburgh will visit Colorado in the worst series in the National League. Ugh. The St. Louis Cardinals will play the San Diego Padres. Yeah, the Yuck series. We're talking about the Pirates and Rockies. Yeah. The Diamondbacks will face the Oakland Athletics of Sacramento out there on the left coast. And the Texas Rangers will take on LaKeena's new look Seattle Mariners. They'll resume that series this weekend. Your national TV schedule looks like this. Speaking of the Cubs and Orioles, game 2 of tomorrow's series will be on FS1 at 1:20 p.m. Your Fox Saturday night game of the week. This is the MLB Speedway series from Tennessee at the NASCAR Stadium. It will be the Cincinnati Reds and the Atlanta Braves. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. It's supposed to be 85,000 fans there at that stadium in Tennessee. The most for a regular season game in MLB history. We'll see how that goes. We'll talk about that on Monday. And, of course, your national TV schedule for Sunday's games, the Astros and the Red Sox at 10:35 in the morning on Roku TV. This is for Sunday. Of course, on MLB Network, the Giants, San Francisco Giants, and the New York Mets will do battle. And, of course, your Sunday night baseball game of the week will feature Detroit at Philadelphia. That's at 6 p.m. And that's your national TV schedule for MLB for this weekend.
Our number 1 in the books, number 2 coming up here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. There was an NFL game last night. Did you guys watch? Also, too, we got a couple of superstar players.
I'll be honest, no.
No, I watched maybe 2 minutes, and that's it. I'll be honest. A couple of star players once out of their respective teams. And speaking of teams, Sports Media News CBS announces their NFL announcing crews, and a big merger. A big purchase just went down too. We'll have that and so much more. LaKeena, McGee, City Brown, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. Gridiron Talk coming up right after this.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Shy. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
How do you take care of your mind health?
For my mental health, I meditate in the mornings.
I have my dogs. They're the best.
I just find ways that help me just relax.
Finding things that make me happy, like being close to my family.
I meditate a lot and read books.
I have hobbies outside of the game. I'm able to switch off. I'm able to turn my brain off from the game of basketball.
Your mind health matters.
Your mind health matters.
It's a romance sport. What? It's a romance sport like that.
Your Marine Corps' way of life is to defend the American way of life. Every day, no matter where we serve, we take a stand for our nation, for each other, for us all. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Everybody in a work zone is someone's somebody.
This is my mom. She works for KDOT.
This is my dad.
This is my mom.
This is my daddy.
This is my sister.
This is my daddy.
This is my son, Scott. He was killed while working in a highway work zone. When you drive through a work zone, drive like a life depends on it. Because it does.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports. On the Friday Fun of this year, we're locked and loaded, and we're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown. You know it's me. You can follow yours truly on Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
And you follow my Keena McGee on the Twitter, X, and Hills again at IG.
As we kick off hour number 2, talking Bears training camp and the rest of the happenings from around the National Football League for this segment. If you have any questions or comments regarding that, you can hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
Of course, we'll start with Bears. The training camp, is in full swing, of course, and I guess Caleb Woods is getting better with Ben Johnson.
You don't say.
Well, Luther Burton the third's been doing very well so far since coming back. So, and they don't play their first preseason game against the. Well, we're actually going to have other practices with the Dolphins next week. Of course, they play them on next Sunday. We'll talk more about that. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm at that point where I'm just like I said before, I'm in like show me mode. Like, let's see this stuff in game. Actually, we probably won't. Like I said, you probably will see the starters very much, in this game, against Miami next Sunday. So, but it's just like, okay, that's nice. Again, let me see them do this in play action, because of course you can say, padded practices and stuff like that, and that's fine. But again, it doesn't really mean anything unless we actually see it on the field, in a game.
And that was going to be my angle too. Of course, we talked about this on previous shows that, especially the noise from the national media, got heard about Ben Johnson and the relationship between him and Caleb Wilson's fracture. We don't know where this is at. It could be headed for disaster. Blah blah blah. As we said, folks, training camps and progression. These things like this happen for a reason, because you're starting anew with new teammates, especially with the Chicago Bears, with a brand new coaching staff. You're trying to Ben Johnson's trying to implement his game plan. He's implementing his message to his team. And Luther Burton III, as you mentioned, LaKeena, during yesterday's press conference, he talked about how Ben Johnson is relaying his message to his players, and the players are taking it with stride. We talked about it last year that this team wasn't held accountable by the previous regime. They needed to be coached harder. So far, so good as far as the players' responses to Ben Johnson's challenge thus far. Now, some of the outstanding performances, if we will point out. You mentioned about Luther Burton III. He caught all 5 of his passes yesterday, including a beautiful 49-yard bomb from Williams to Burton. As I said before, the Bears do not have a wide receiver in that room that can stretch the field. Luther Burton III is supposed to be the guy that does that. He did well from all accounts from yesterday. Also, too, you take a look at Amalide Zacchaeus, who they brought over he's formerly from Philadelphia and Washington. He also been outstanding throughout camp. So the Bears have targets in that wide receiver room. They can go get it. They just need guys that can stretch the field.
Now, Williams actually has been, did the rounds over, of course, ESPN 1000. He interviewed with Waddle and Sylvie yesterday, and he said the pressure is not a thing for him this year. He's not thinking of it that way. His job is basically, just, let the outside noise and work itself out, and, kind of take care of everything what he control on the field. That's really the best approach you can do, especially again with the new regime. Only 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, I should say, last year. And that was still like the 5th best single season ever by a Bears quarterback. Just shows you how bad the Bears quarterback history has been in the entire history of the franchise. So I guess if you want to say that that's actually progress, if you want to put it, in that perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think, look, I think he knows that deep down that the pressure will be on him this year. And look, as far as the Bears, look, you beat up your old line. You've got, of course, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. We'll see how Coastal Loveland does in this offense. The O-line actually looks decent. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's just one of those days where I think it's just like, well, let's see how Caleb does, and we'll kind of like figure out, okay, what is it gonna, what's it gonna take for the Bulls to make that move?
Yeah, and also too, we talked about this before too, and you mentioned with the Miami Dolphins coming in here to play the Bears in the first preseason game next Sunday afternoon. I believe they're going to have 2 joint practices in the middle of next week, and so we'll be keeping an eye on that. And this is where we'll start to see the resemblance of Ben Johnson's program relating to the opponents, not just to each other on the field at Hallis Hall coming up next week. But I want to talk about for a minute the offensive line. Of course, left tackle is the prominent position for a quarterback in the National Football League, because that's the quarterback's blind side. We talked about the 3 new additions on the offensive line in Tooney and Jonah Jackson and Drew Dahlman, but that left tackle position is very important. It's outstanding because you have Braxton Jones that's coming off an injury. He's into his last year of his rookie deal. You also have Ozzie Trapillo, who they like a lot, who they drafted. And let's not forget about Kareem Amagashi, who they threw in last year. He struggled. Now he's in his second year. So I know that Trapillo and Amagashi has been splitting reps with the first team. I want to see what Ben Johnson does in that joint practice with the Dolphins next week. Who's going to get the majority of the first team snaps? Because this is the time that you're supposed to develop chemistry, develop timing with your offensive. Is it going to be Amagashi or will it be Ozzie Trapillo? And those are the questions that hopefully Ben Johnson will have the answers for with the joining practice with the Dolphins next week.
I want to see how that defense is because, of course, you got Granger. We'll see how he does opposite Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter. That's going to be another one that
he's been having an outstanding camp.
Yeah, everybody, there's been a lot of buzz about him. So we'll see. Now, Jalen Johnson's a little bit of a question mark. Ben Johnson kind of made it seem like he might play in the opener. He might not, regular season, I mean. So that's another question mark as well. We'll see how Brisker does. He was one of the few bright spots in that secondary. Kyler Gordon as well, Tyree Stevenson too. So, yeah, the defense, I think, will be fine under Dennis Allen. But I just think that how are these guys are going to mesh well, especially when you still don't have that edge guy on the other side of Sweat. So that's another question that they're going to have to face. So, that's another question mark for the Bears. But yeah, we won't get our answers, once the Dolphins come in and do their practices, and of course they play their game next Sunday. But you kind of wonder, like, okay, wouldn't see the progression of the team so far?
You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena hanging out here with you as we talk Bears and the rest of the NFL. In this segment, you have any questions or comments for us, please hit us up in the comments section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Questions and comments, LaKeena will get them up on the screen for you. Please like, share, and subscribe for our show and let others know that we're killing it, as the kids would say right here on Sports Zone Chicago. A couple more things about the Bears before we move on to the rest of the National Football League. LaKeena, you mentioned about Dennis Allen. He talked to me the other day, and one of the things that he brought up was we mentioned with Jalen Johnson being perhaps the best defensive player on the roster. He may be in question for the season opener coming up in September. But Dennis Allen said the other day that the number 2 defensive back starting spot may be up for grabs. And I remember we talked about right before training camp, LaKeena, that in an article, I think it was Miss Alyssa Barbieri said that Tariq Stevenson could be a surprise cut. I still don't see that, but this new coaching staff says that there's competition for every roster spot. I like it personally. So do you really think, barring injuries, of course, do you really think that Tariq Stevenson's job is really on the line? Or do you think, well, it's just pumping up, getting the attention of the other guys in that room?
Yeah, I think it's just a pump up. I think, we know this is how Dennis Allen usually does it. We've seen him this coaching career. He did it. He tried to do it in New Orleans. I guess it didn't work, but it was kind of like his way of doing things. So, yeah, I mean, he might just be trying to pump him up, especially all the silliness that Stevenson did last year. Terrell Smith's been pretty solid. I know Trey Flowers has been pretty good as well in that right corner position. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't think Stevenson, unless he gets hurt. I don't think Stevenson's going anywhere.
I agree with you. Like you mentioned about the like I said, the silliness last year. We talked about it 1,000 times. We will end it here. But with this new coaching staff, they said that they wanted to create a new culture, create competition. So far, it has been so good. It's just that with those joint practices with the Miami Dolphins that have us all next week, I'm interested to see, as I said, who's going to get the first team reps at left tackle. Will Braxton Jones be healthy enough to participate in those practices? Me personally, I doubt it, but we'll see. But is it Kareem Mamagashi? Is it Ozzie Trapillo? Those 2 guys are behind Braxton Jones on the depth chart right now. And number 2, I'm looking for that running back room. We talked about DeAndre Swift. He's going to be the number 1 running back, but you still have Rashad Johnson. As you said, he'll probably be that short down situational guy. And you have Kyle Manon guy, that 7th round pick out of the University of Maryland, who this Bears coaching staff, and particularly Eric Bieniemy, the running backs coach, they like a lot. So how much is Kyle Manon guy going to get? How many reps is going to get against the Dolphins in that joint practice? And how many reps? We'll probably dig into this more in our shows next week. But how much playing time that Kyle Manon guy is going to get in next week's preseason over against the Dolphins?
All right, so let's start the rest of NFL. The Football Hall of Fame game. Like I said, I'll admit, I only watched like 2 minutes. I only heard of Brett Musburger. He was in the booth with Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth. That's the only thing I saw. So you didn't see Justin Herbert, you didn't see Jared Allen, you didn't see any of the first stringers for neither the Chargers or the Lions. So but yeah, I mean, Trey Lance looked good. That's about all. I saw the highlights. He looked pretty good. 2 TDs. Kyle Allen did not. So to take that. Kamal Vidal, who was one of their early picks, and talk about the Chargers. He looked really good. As well as Hassan Hawkins, Craig Reynolds. I know their defense. Talk about the Chargers defense looked really good too yesterday. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, that's what we expect in these Hall of Fame preseason games, that your stars won't play, they kiss babies and wave to the crowd, take pictures, and yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
It's about those second, third, or fourth string guys that's trying to make the team. Who's going to take advantage of those opportunities? Who's going to make those impact plays? Who's going to fight to stay on the roster? And that's what we saw last night. So you talked about Trey Lance. LaKeena, I was listening to I should call out this show. I really like it a lot. I'll call it out, even though I like him a lot. But The Odd Couple on Fox Sports, we all know you had a chance to listen to him last night. But one of the topics they had was Trey Lance. Of course, he didn't succeed in San Francisco. He didn't get off the bench for the Dallas Cowboys the last couple of years. Now you mentioned he's with the Chargers. He looked great last night. They talked about Trey Lance being the biggest bust ever in the NFL. I said, not so fast. Trey Lance's career is still in flux at best, but he's still going to get a chance to play as such. But do you guys hear a couple of guys here? I know you remember this, LaKeena, because you're a college football head. Tony Mandrich, Brian Bosworth. I think those two have say, hold my beer, we have something to say.
Right. And look, he's still only 25, so I think probably can say that he's a bust. I mean, we'll see how he does. He's in a nice situation over there in Los Angeles with the Chargers. He's learned from one of the better quarterbacks right now, Justin Herbert. Of course, they got a great coaching staff, with Jim Harbaugh behind him. So I think he's given them he gave him the treatment you saw before the game. Like he likes to pump his quarterbacks up. That's been a thing of it since he started coaching.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that'll give him the confidence that look, if he does, look, knock on wood, that Herbert doesn't get hurt and he has to come out, but it'll have to come in. But yeah, that'll be interesting. But yeah, I think it's a little bit premature to say that Lance is a bust. Like, give him another couple of years if he doesn't make strides with an NFL team.
And speaking of Trey Lance, you mentioned Jim Harbaugh. Of all the prototype quarterbacks that he likes throughout both his NFL and his college coaching careers, Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, and also too he looked at JJ McCarthy. We see we'll see what he'll do this year for Minnesota. So Jim and Andrew Luck, let's not forget at Stanford. That's the first guy that I thought about.
Couple years,
yeah. So Jim Harbaugh loves those mobile quarterbacks that can get out the pocket and make plays. Now Justin Herbert, he does have some speed. He's not Michael Vick and anything like that, but he has enough speed to make defenses think twice. So Harbaugh likes those prototype quarterbacks that are mobile and they can get out of the pocket and make plays. So Trey Lance is, if you really look at it closely, it's not surprised that he's on this Chargers roster. So like you said, LaKeena, heaven forbid that Justin Herbert gets hurt, you have a serviceable backup at Trey Lance, and I think he's going to get his time to shine. He's going to get his time to shine in the preseason, but anything happens to Herbert during the regular season, I think Trey Lance will be okay.
All right. Now, of course, the Pro Football Hall of Fame and enshrinement ceremony will be tomorrow on simulcast on NFL Network and ESPN. Of course, Eric Allen, Jared Allen, no relation. Antonio Gates and Sterling Sharp will be your 2025 inductees. Of course, we talked about that earlier this year. Randall McDaniel, of course, he and Eric Allen played together at Arizona State. Of course, a fellow Hall of Famer and a fellow teammate from Philadelphia as well. He'll be his rep. Steve Hutchinson, of course, fellow Hall of Famer, a longtime teammate of Jared Allen. He'll be his presenter. LT LaDainian Tomlinson, another fellow Hall of Famer. Of course, he and Antonio Gates were teammates over with the Chargers, back in the San Diego Chargers. And of course, Sterling Sharp, all the other stuff. We can Google the other stuff. Of course, fellow Hall of Famer, he'll represent his big brother Sterling. So, like I said, the Shriver ceremony will be in Canada, of course, tomorrow at noon Chicago time on ESPN and NFL Network simulcasts.
And let's not forget about Sterling Sharp for you young folks listening and watching us out there. He was one of the first guys and one of those first athletes from our generation, LaKeena, to really make it big in media before Shannon. Of course, before him, he had Ahmad Rashad, who started it all back in the early 80s with NBC. But I remember Sterling Sharp playing too. Of course, he had that devastating foot injury, which unfortunately ended his career 2 years before the Packers won the Super Bowl following the 1996 season. But Sterling Sharp works they do on the field. I really enjoyed his work at ESPN in the mid to late 90s. He was right before Sean Sarsbury, another friend of the show, that really brought that energy, brought that passion for football to the analysis and to Sports Centers, and of course with those Sunday countdown shows. I really like Sterling Sharp a lot. Of course, I know he did spend a little bit of time with NFL Network before he called it quits. So Sterling Sharp, I'm really looking forward to his speech this weekend, and so it's finally just due for Sterling Sharp to get his due. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's getting the quote unquote Gale Sayers treatment, but it's kind of in that realm because if it wasn't for that devastating foot injury, you could really make a real argument that he's a top 5 wide receiver all time behind Chris Carter and of course Jerry Rice and some of those other guys that are on that list as far as our receiving yards, all-time receiving yards are concerned.
And we'll have the recap of all 4 speeds. I think all 4 speeds will be just fine. I'm sure you'll laugh, cry, and all that stuff. So, of course, you can check it out tomorrow on NFL Network and ESPN at noon. Now, this part of the football discussion will be the NFL disgruntled stars portion. If you want to look at it, of course, Trey Henderson, of course, the defensive end for Cincinnati. But he still isn't satisfied with the contract. So, he wants to trade. Now we find out yesterday that Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin, he wants to trade now. And of course, Micah Parsons, if you look at through Twitter X, of course, you guys can multitask, watching us and reading Twitter. We do it here sometimes, no big deal. Micah Parsons has said thank you to the Cowboys organization. He scrubbed all the Cowboys stuff from his social media. He said my trade request has been submitted to Stephen Jones personally, but according to the Athletics, Miss Diana Rossini, she says that the Cowboys have no intention of trading Parsons per sources, but they're still not going to stop teams from Raleigh to give the Cowboys a call. So your thoughts, my friend?
Dallas Cowboys drama.
I know.
LaKeena, you're so proper ahead. This is just perfect for just another day down in Dallas, Texas. Drama colliding like an accident. As we said during this past offseason, I didn't think Jerry Jones would have enough money to pay Micah Parsons. I know he's been injured for the last couple of years, and he's disappeared in some games too over the last couple of years as well. So I'd say, I've been on a train to cut his losses because of for the money that he wants. The production hasn't been there for the last couple of years now. When he's healthy, he's good. He's one of the top pass rushers in the league, but injuries has been his bugaboo for the last 2 or 3 years. So for the amount that he wants, he's just not worth it. Now, there's going to be some teams like, well, we'll take a chance. There's always that element, but Jerry Jones really backed himself into the corner. And he has done that in the past with some of his other star players like Ezekiel Elliott in his prime back a decade ago. Of course, CeeDee Lamb, he gave that money to, but he had to go through a struggle to get that. And now you backed yourself in the corner with Micah Parsons. Both parties are to blame here for this, and it's going to get resolved one way or the other. Just stay tuned, I guess.
Yeah, he was tied for 5th last year in sacks with 12. So just hypothetically, on the off chance that the Cowboys do trade him, who do you think? I know Bears fans going to be like, hey, but remember Parsons isn't an edge rusher though. That's the thing. So
that's why he's not coming here.
Exactly. in Baltimore, maybe they could always use a guy to be able to play opposite, Roquan Smith. Maybe.
I was going to say Buffalo, but probably not.
Yeah, do they have room in Buffalo, though?
I don't think so. That's
the
why I said probably
question.
not.
Yeah. The Cardinals, maybe? That might be an intriguing, place for Parsons.
I know that's, like I said, they're supposed to be one of the surprise teams this year, so they'll definitely boost up those odds if they get them.
Minnesota, I don't know if they got room. The Eagles, like I said, I doubt Jerry Joe's gonna want to trade him in a division, so that's
not happening. That's not happening. No,
I'm stumped, Sid.
Maybe Houston, maybe.
I thought about Houston too. I mean, they can always beef up their front seven. I don't know,
but even though they're interconference team, I don't think Jerry Jones was to trade him to in-state Houston. So remember, he didn't want the Texans in there, but it was nothing he could do about that. But that's a long time ago. Houston could be a team in play there. Let's see. I don't think he'll trade him within he's not going to trade within the division in the NFC East. That's not happening. The NFC South, maybe Atlanta, but I don't see it. Maybe Tampa, but I probably don't see it. Let's see. The 49ers, no. They could use it, but I don't see that because they're trying to clear up some cash space. Some of the 49ers, so no. Yeah. Arizona's maybe a possibility. Maybe the Rams, probably not. Although you never know with them.
I know Seattle, they would love to have them, though.
I don't see that.
Yeah,
they would, but I don't see it realistically.
Leslie will try to find some picks underneath somebody's table.
Go to the old school of Danny Age. I got some picks here. After picks and then some.
I can't really see anybody else. The Chargers, like I said, I don't know if they got any cap room. Now, real quick, I know we got to go
would
up
say the
against
Chiefs, but they definitely don't have any room. No,
they don't have any room. They had to scrape. They had to get rid of two to pay the guys that they have. They're younger guys, so I don't see that happening either.
You think Pete Carroll will take a swing? The Raiders?
Well, after what happened with Christian Wilkins, I mean, I'm sure they could definitely use him. So that whole thing. But I can see it probably has maybe putting the feelers out there. So it could be interesting to see how Micah Parsons where he goes. Now, what about McLaurin? Do you think? I'm trying to see look, the Commanders I doubt they're going to trade him, but
I doubt it too.
Yeah, so I can't see that. The Trey Hendrickson thing is interesting because I know he and his he's done interviews and saying that he kind of feels like, I don't want to say betrayed, but he kind of feels like abandoned by the Cincy organization. So, I don't know, that whole thing might be odd too. So, who knows? I know the Bears fans probably would take a chance on him because he might be more doable, but you may have to get rid of maybe some of your first and second round picks to get him.
Yeah, and I don't know the Bears are in a position to do that. As I said before, the wide receiver room for Chicago is very crowded. I do want to bring up this question before we break for the bottom of the hour. I was listening to 98.5 The Sports Hub this morning, and Scott Zolak, who has a midday show, and also he's the radio analyst for the New England Patriots. He brought up a question that I thought it was very interesting for the Patriots. Should they take a flyer on Terry McLaurin? I believe he said yes, and I would say yes too, because Mike Vrabel is back, obviously, as a coach. You have Stephon Diggs on the other side. The number 2 wide receiver positions up for grabs right now. You brought back Drake May. If you New England, you should take a flyer on Terry McLaurin. They'll definitely get that program back up and running, and you'll increase your chances perhaps sneaking as a wild card this year. Because I think they're going to do a little bit better than what people expect, and they take a flyer on Terry McLaurin. Drake May is going to have an extra target that's going to help him and take all that pressure off of Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, we still don't know if Diggs is going to be healthy enough to play yet. I know he hasn't practiced much so far at training camp, but they really don't have anybody else behind him. Kyle Williams, maybe DeMario Douglas, Mac Hollins. I mean, they would definitely beef up that. Yeah, I mean, look, they'll definitely beef up that wide receiver room for sure. And with the Patriots, I'm sure, even though he's a defensive guy, I'm sure Coach Rabel would love to have him. But yeah, you wonder, like, do you want to? You may have to give up a couple of picks here to get him. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yep. All right, LaKeena, this is our 2-2 break, and this coming up next will be our sports potpourri segment. As LaKeena mentioned at the top of the show, sports media news regarding the NFL on CBS. Locally here in Chicago, one sports radio station did a worthy cause with a 24-hour marathon for charity. We got to get into some other stuff as well, and we'll wrap up the week with a whole lot of fun. More fun as usual. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You're listening to Second City Sports. #Friday Fun right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Shy. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
Got it done here. Ouch! And we're gonna make sure you lit this time. Ouch! You're not gonna get me this time.
Ow, Manny!
Whoops! Let's try an easy one.
Every day, we take steps to keep the people we love safe, but some health risks are easy to miss. Ticks hiding in the yard can spread germs, like the ones that cause Lyme disease. Mice searching for food can spread bacteria that makes us sick. Mosquitoes lay eggs in standing water and can spread West Nile virus and more. Cockroaches are drawn to water in the home, leaving behind allergens that can trigger asthma attacks. Common pests can threaten our health. Learn how to protect your family at pestworld.org.
Hey, this is Corey McGee, and I listen to Sean and Maya on the morning show.
Welcome back to the Friday Fun edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You can follow yours truly on Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow McGee on the Twitter, X, again at IG.
This is our last break of the show for today and for the week. So, you have any last minute questions or comments for us on any of the topics that we discussed on today's show thus far in our sports potpourri segment, you can definitely hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
All right, Sid, sports media news. And of course, this news came across the pike, during our interview with Evan Altman. I was looking through back through Twitter. Now, this is according to Andrew Marchand, of course, from The Athletic, does a great job doing sports media stuff. He's been doing it for years. He said that ESPN and NFL have agreed to a blockbuster billion-dollar deal that will result in multiple top media properties like the NFL Red Zone and in NFL Network moving to said network. Let me go back to Mr. Marchand's Twitter account and such. So this will also include, if I can find this during the thing. Okay, so yeah, it'll give ESPN access to the Red Zone, NFL Network, 7 more regular season games, fantasy football rights, and more in exchange for equity in ESPN, potentially worth billions. Let me say this again, billions of dollars. So, Sid, what's your early impressions of this news?
I think we talked about this on our last show on Monday. I'll reiterate some of those thoughts from there to here. With ESPN now taking over NFL Network, how many the ones that are at NFL Network right now, will they stay over there, or will they have their ESPN's current NFL analysts and employees do shows over there? Because as we said before, for the last couple years, NFL Network has cut a lot of people, cut a lot back on live program. Now they still have NFL Game Day Morning with Rich Eisen, Steve Mariucci, and Gerald McCoy and Kurt Warner, and that's still a great show. And then of course you have NFL Insiders, but outside of that, you have replays of NFL games almost 24/7. So we'll see what ESPN does. There's going to be some reshuffling, and don't forget, Rich Eisen will have his radio show on ESPN Radio, I believe, in the fall. It's going to be on ESPN Plus as well, and along with ESPN Direct to Consumer debuting this fall, I believe, within the next month and a half or so. So things are aligned for ESPN. Yes, they're the Walmart of sports media. They're taking over everything. It seems like. So there's going to be some reshuffling. And let's not forget Peter Schrager, who left the NFL Network to sign with ESPN. He's going to have his show also to debut in the fall. So there's going to be some reshuffling. Just want to see how ESPN will put this all together. You mentioned with the game broadcast as well. NFL Network had those international games for the most part, and we'll see what ESPN does now. Will Joe Buck and Troy Aikman call some of those games? Will they have some of the top college football broadcast teams do those games? We'll see, but there's going to be some reshuffling for sure.
And that is according to what Mr. Marchand said, that he thinks that the rest of it will stay the same, presented this very same way. It's more of a big care for that new app and that ESPN is trying to launch, and it'll be a good use with the carriage agreements with the distributors. And and the program and the entertainment stuff is right there, and they'll get paid like it. I guess is more of a money thing as well. So like you said, I think this will definitely gonna be some reshuffle as long as they don't got Steve. They better keep Scott Hansen, but I don't think. Like we said a few weeks back, I don't think he would have signed that contract with NFL Network with the Red Zone if they were going to F around with the Red Zone. And I'm sure all of those folks there probably knew that this would probably happen. So yeah, again, we'll see how all this kind of shakes out, because as Marchand said, it's going to take over a year for everything to kind of be finalized officially and such. So. So everything will be status quo this season. It'll be beyond that. That's going to be really like the $1 million question for this.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be a lot of reshuffling. And like you said, with NFL fans, we heard from MMA fans, and we're hearing it from NBA fans. We had our 2 cents on it during the NBA playoffs and finals. You don't want Stephen A. near the NFL, no. And that's going to piss off a lot of NFL fans on what ESPN has gone through over the last decade or so, especially with their network being affected by cord cutting. That's the last thing you want is Stephen A. on the NFL coverage. That's going to be disastrous.
All right. So the NFL announced teams, for CDS were announced on Wednesday, and of course, friend of the show, I'll try to get him back on for the season. So I know we haven't had him on in a bit, but Cyril Diaz and Anna Marcelletta and Aditi Kinkawabala. I think I got her name right. I almost did. Of course, they're back together again. Kevin Harlan, Trent Green, and Melanie Collins, they're together again. Of course, the number 1 team is Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, and Tracy Wolfson. They're back together again. Now, a couple of changes up with some of the other teams, though. Eagle will now be teamed with JJ Watt. and Evan Washburn, and that means Charles Davis, who will be actually after this season will actually be taking over the top spot over doing college football next season. Of course, he'll be with Andrew Catalong, Jason McCourty, and AJ Ross. This coincides with the fact that Tiki Barber will be doing pre and post with the Giants, so that's where the opening is there. But and then, of course, Tom McCarthy and Ross Tucker will do select games as well whenever the CBS has double headers. Of course, Beth Mullins and Chris Lewis will be back doing play-by-play stuff on select games. Like I said, whenever CBS has double headers. Former Patriot Super Bowl champion Logan Ryan, he'll be doing some analyst work in some games. Of course, Amanda Bellows and Tiffany Blackman, I should say, will be doing side report for those select games as well. So, Sid, what do you think?
I'm not too surprised at that. Maybe the one surprise was Tiki Barber. You mentioned he'll do New York Giants pre and post game on WFAN in New York. But it's going to be interesting how J.J. Watt does game analysis. I know that he was trying to find his footing last year on the NFL Today. Remember, he missed some weeks because of special assignments thereabouts. So, I was all for the change of them getting younger. Matt Ryan has done an outstanding job. So, J.J. Watt calling games. It's going to be interesting to see how the chemistry he has between him and Ian Eagle. I think they may get one of those Netflix Christmas games. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see about that. But it's going to be interesting to see how J.J. Watt develops that chemistry with Ian Eagle. And will he have a little bit of that Tony Romo predictability as far as being an analyst, calling plays, calling defensive schemes before the play is snapped? We'll see, but we just don't know what to expect from Watt. But I'm interested to see what kind of chemistry he develops with Ian Eagle.
He's been, if you follow his Instagram, he's been practicing a lot once his news broke. So we'll see. I think he'll be fine. He'll probably have his rough spots, kind of like what Tom Brady went through last year. He may have some rough first week or two, but I think he'll definitely get better as the season goes along. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, I mean, he started get his feet wet a bit when we do his studio stuff. So I'm interested to see how this goes. I kind of wish they would have put Davis with Watt so he can kind of be his kind of like his mentor. Through all this as he transitions things to do college football after this season. But
didn't think about that angle, but yeah.
Yeah, what do I know?
I didn't think about that angle. Yeah, I didn't think about that angle, but that would have been the perfect scenario, as you mentioned. The mentor of Charles Davis showing JJ the ropes as far as being an analyst is concerned. Because Charles Davis is one of the top football TV analysts in the game, so it would have been nice for JJ to learn under him for a year. There's still been a respectable three-man booth, even though that's the number 2 team for CBS. Definitely been more than respectable. So, in JJ Watt, we kind of had to learn off of him. And plus, Charles Davis has worked with Ian Eagle before. So, that would have been interesting. Obviously, that has not come to pass. So, but like you said, we'll all find out together because Romo, as I mentioned, he came out the gate strong, but he had to find his way. So J.J. Watt is going to do the same thing, but I think he'll be okay. But it's going to take him and Ian Eagle some time to develop that chemistry. It's just how it happens. No one comes out of the gate booming right away.
No, that's just even some of the best announcing squads have had kind of had their issues. Remember Pat Summerall, and John Madden, God rest both their souls. I mean, Madden said, "Hey, look, it took him a while to kind of get it going as well, to get their chemistry and their rapport going." So, and of course, it worked out pretty well. So, there is, it happens.
Yeah. Before we move on, LaKeena, I know they haven't made an announcement yet, unless I missed it. But Fox, I know they're going to have some changes with their pregame show. At least the pregame show, the kickoff. I'm talking about for the NFL with Carissa Thompson, because Michael Vick is coaching Norfolk State now.
Yeah.
I know Charles Woodson and Julian Edelman are still there. Of course, Peter Schrager and Michael Vick are gone. But who's going to replace Jimmy Johnson? Because remember, ever since COVID, Rob Gronkowski, whenever Fox had the regional games, non-doubleheader Sundays, he replaced Jimmy Johnson at the desk. Will it be him for the time being, or will they make another high move Woodson or Julian Edelman into Jimmy Johnson's spot, or will they make a surprise hire from the outside? I think if they would have had make a surprise hire from outside, I think that would have been announced by now. So will Rob Gronkowski keep that seat, or will it be Woodson or Julian Edelman, or perhaps somebody else that we haven't thought of taking Jimmy Johnson's seat on the main pregame show?
Yeah, I think Fox is going to announce their team, I think, next week. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But, yeah, I mean, I know Terry Bradshaw has kind of put the feelers out there that this might be his last season. He kind of, like, didn't really make it known, but I think he kind of put the feelers out there thinking that maybe he might be done after this season. So, and look, no shade to any of those folks. I think Jimmy Johnson, as great as he still was, he kind of probably got sick of the traveling back and forth, from Miami where he lives. So, he probably didn't want to do that anymore, which I can't say I blame him. And of course, Strahan, not gonna see him on GMA much, when football season starts, because he does the bi-coastal thing too. Howie Long, he still sounds great, but he's getting up there in age too. So yeah. I would be surprised if they're starting to kind of do a little transitional period with that that Fox NFL Sunday show.
Yeah, and like I said, it's going to be interesting to see who fills Jimmy Johnson's shoes. Will they keep it safe and let Rob Gronkowski fill their seat? Because he's actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit here and say he's the greatest of all time, anything like that. But my best bet, if I was a betting man, I think they'll let Rob Gronkowski, at least for this season, keep that seat that was previously filled by Jimmy Johnson. Because think about it, if they would have made a big hire from the outside, they would have announced it by now.
Unless they know something. Let's say they're saving like a big surprise. Like
that'll be the hell of a big surprise at this point, because the preseason starts next week. So
and we know. And look, and Gronk, I think they're gonna let Gronk be Gronk. I don't think they're gonna make Gronk into something that he's not. He kind of does what he does, so I think they don't want to change him, so they'll just let him do do his thing and just kind of just let it rip.
Yep. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid LaKeena here with you, keeping up with the sports media theme, and let's bring it back to Chicago locally. Of course, Danny Parkins, friend of the show, of course now with FS1. He did a 24-hour marathon. He'll simulcasted parts of it on Marquee Sports Network. Of course, it was on 670 Score and then 670score.com and 670 Score's YouTube page. They raised over $750,000, $750,000 to be exact. 2 thumbs up. Great job to everyone that was involved. You mentioned Craig Kenny was on the station, crying. Of course, part of it because of Ryne Sandberg's passing, and other guests hopped on the 24-hour telethon. Congrats to Mitch Rose and everybody there, 670 The Score, everybody who was involved, all the daily shows that were involved. So Danny Parkins did it again. I believe this was year number 3, if I'm not mistaken, that he's done this. So it keeps getting better and better every year, and they raise more money than they did last year. So Cubs Care benefit from this, and of course 670 The Score benefited from it as well.
Yeah, I think they raised about like 670 or six. Well, however, I think they raised about like 680,000, a little over 680,000 last year. So this well surpassed their previous number. And I know this is very personal to him. Of course, he lost his brother to last summer, which is a form of brain cancer. So you saw some of the cast of thousands there, of course, all friends of the show, Marshall Harris, Layla Rahimi, Danny and our other buddy Mark Brody did it last night too. So for I think like about 5 hours last night. So it was a great time. So I'm glad they were money for a great cause, and a personal, I'm sure, to Danny and a few others there. And of course, the Cubs too. Of course, like you said, it was on Marquee as well, simulcast. So yeah, a great time by y'all, and it's everyone did a great job, and I know Dave's gonna be taking a break, of course, because he's gonna be having a new show launching in the next couple of weeks, on the new FS1. We'll try to kind of make a dent in those their sports early sports morning block.
Yeah. Speaking of football, LaKeena, going back to last night, I was trying to catch up on a couple of things, and Brent Musburger made his presence felt on the NBC broadcast last night, and then debuted a couple of new entities as far as first down yardage markers and all other gadgets and scenarios, if you will. Tell us about it.
Yeah, they have a virtual measurement system to measure first downs and stuff like that. If you saw that, I know NFL their social media kind of played it up. They kind of had this thing where like they got this virtual thing. I guess they use a little system where they put the ball in and they use kind of like a little, not really a measuring thing, but I guess like a ruler, like a visual ruler to kind of just see how far I guess teams are for markers and such. So I thought it was very interesting how they presented it yesterday. They said it's going to be slowly rolled out, so it's not going to be in every game, but they're going to try it in the preseason just to see how folks like it. I mean, I thought, look, I could have missed the chain games, but look, I mean, it's we're well in the 21st century now, so if you got technology, you might as well just do it.
Is it NFL's version of AI measuring first downs?
I know it is a little freaky though, the whole AI thing. Yeah.
but I will say this: the NFL, whether we like it or not, they're constant at the forefront of change. I know that's the number one sport in our country, the United States, but they're the forefront of change within the four major sports. Along with the NBA, of course, Major League Baseball is slow to change, but at least from baseball's perspective, most of the changes with the pitch clock and getting rid of, you still have the intentional walk, but you get a pass and instead of having pitches to waste 4 pitches, and it's benefited from a viewership standpoint and from some younger fans getting interested in baseball. So it's worked out on both fronts for Major League Baseball. For the NFL, it seems like, at least from the outside looking in, they can do whatever they want to. As long as fans are watching, the NFL is going to be fine.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how this new element of NFL measuring it. It's going to be interesting how that goes. Now, speaking of keeping the Hall of Fame thing, Pro Football Hall of Famer Kurt Warner will be the lead analyst for those Christmas games coming up on Netflix. And I like this. I don't mind this because I think what CBS and basically and Fox basically told Netflix, no, you cannot use our people. So but yeah, Kurt Warner does a great job game analysis work. So I like this one. Plus, yeah. So Netflix. I mean, look, it'll be in millions all over around the world. So.
yeah, beggars can't be choosers, right? So with CBS and Fox, no, you cannot have our announcers. You go to NFL Network. Like you said, Kurt Warner, as I mentioned, with their NFL Game Day morning, he's been there for a long time. Plus, he does Monday Night Football and Westwood One with Kevin Harlan. So he has experience. He's done a great job, and he'll continue to do a great job. So it's a great choice there.
Now, the First Lady, former First Lady, Michelle Obama, I think most people will agree with her on this. She said in her podcast that she does with her younger brother, Craig Robinson, a former men's basketball coach, says that watching ESPN is like watching The Real Housewives of Atlanta. Her words, not mine. So during the episode of their her and her brother Craig's podcast, she says that basically that with all the with all the stuff between Steve Smith and Chris Russo and the Pat McAfee and all his what you want to call it shenanigans, he said that they were talking with La Culturistas host Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers. They for the new episode of their podcast, and they said if I listen to ESPN for an hour, it's like watching The Real Housewives of Atlanta. It's the same drama. They're yelling at each other. They don't get along. And I mean, CDSF, he's just like every other, and he'd be a great housewife. That's what Matt Rogers said. So do you agree with her comments?
Yes, I do 100%. And I was reminded of this many years ago. What does the E in ESPN stand for? Entertainment. And they don't fall short of that, especially now we're in a social media age, which is not going anywhere anytime soon. Those folks are chasing for clicks, for clicks as their business model. And we talked about before, LaKeena, we're not going to dive deep into it here, but with the stuff with Kaepernick and inserting politics and letting fan favorite anchors go throughout the years, and with the cord cutting, ESPN has really gone through these changes, and they were slow to change as far as the social media game as well. And so, bringing Pat McAfee over, and now they have Rich Eisen. They're going to have his radio show simulcast on ESPN Radio and ESPN Plus starting in the fall. So ESPN they're trying to catch up to the times. Will it go back to when we were kids, LaKeena? Unfortunately, not. But now with them, reshuffling for college football, they're going to have that new NBA TV deal, which starts this season, which they re-signed for, even though they're going to have slightly less games, regular season games now and playoff games now. ESPN is really adapted to these changes, and it's not going to go back to the way things were when we were kids, but they're trying to catch up to the times, and they weren't ahead of the curve many years ago. So we'll see how this all plays out.
Oh boy, going to be very interesting there. So especially now that the ESPN is going to have a majority stake in NFL Network. So going to be interesting to see what happens here. Now let me see if I can find my thoughts here. But yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what happens with that. But that's going to be interesting here. Anything else before we move on, sports media news wise?
No, I want to give a shout out to our guy Brandon Schutzes in the chat. How are you, Brandon? We see your comment. We'll get to the Astros trade for Correa in just a moment, but I want to ask LaKeena about we haven't had a chance to get our thoughts about the trade deadline deals. Your Seattle Mariners picking up Eugenio Suarez. I know he got hit in the hand the other night in Detroit. Of course, he was a member of the Arizona Diamondbacks at the time, but as we said a couple weeks ago, they picked up Josh Naylor, and we said it wasn't enough. They picked up Eugenio Suarez. Do you think Seattle's a real contender against Brandon's Astros for the AL West Division title?
And don't forget, they also got Shane Bieber as well, who had another successful rehab start on Wednesday. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see their 4.5 back. They had a solid week this week. We're talking about the Mariners did. I know Houston won 2 out of 3 against the Nationals. So I guess they might have gotten caught looking ahead a little bit, but we'll see. I know the Mariners, they had a tough one. They lost 2 out of 3 to the A's. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, the Mariners, they play, like you said earlier, they played the Rangers this weekend. So that'll be kind of like the big test here. Of course, Suarez goes back to Seattle, where he spent his first few years in the majors. So we just see how that kind of sets up there. But yeah, look, I think that they got what they needed, and a utility guy, of course, and also a couple of top pitchers. So that's kind of what what you expect. Now, I want to talk about the Cubs for a second, Sid, and I know some people I heard everybody kept saying, "Oh, well, why didn't Jed do this?" And why? Look, you're disappointed that they didn't get guys like McKenzie Gore wasn't going anywhere. Look, they got new ownership over there with the Nationals. They don't have
a new front office too. They're reshuffling right now.
Yeah, so they don't have incentive to trade him at this point. I know the buzz started a couple of days before on Tuesday. Look, the Marlins. Look, they didn't have incentives to trade their pitchers either. Their top 2 pitchers, Cabrera and Alcantara. They really didn't have any there. And plus, the market was just too tough, I think, to get a lot of those guys. And some of the teams probably didn't want to part with them. So you really can't blame Jed. I know Jed. Look, I'm sure Jed will love to have gotten a starting pitcher, but he probably couldn't. So it is what it is.
As I said before, and I'll say it again, with that extra wild card spot, you have more buyers than sellers, and that's what we saw. And I think with some of those players you just mentioned, the price tag was too high. Now bringing it back to my White Sox, I know they let Adrian Houser go, and Sean Anderson from CHGO, he was on with us around this time last week. He said, "Don't be surprised, White Sox fans, so with the return you get for Adrian Houser." Of course, Adrian Houser is now the member of the Tampa Bay Rays. You're not going to get an overhaul for Houser, even though he has been pitching well as of late. Of course, he missed his start the other day against Philadelphia, which was smart by the Sox, by the way, because they knew they were going to trade him, which ended up happening. But you weren't going to get as much in return, and there's a reasons why the Adrian Houser has been bouncing around from team to team to team in his short 5-year career in MLB. But I want to talk about Luis Robert Jr., LaKeena. Do you think it would be smart for the White Sox to pick up that $20 million option at the end of the season? I still say no if you know for sure he's not going to be part of your plans. Now, maybe Chris Guess will try to trade him again this offseason. You saw what happened last offseason. If you believe the reports, the asking price was too much. You dare he tries it again this offseason? You may get the same damn result.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why. That you wonder that maybe it was the price too high for Robert, especially the guy that's in and out of lineup. That he's not going to be healthy for for a whole 2-3 weeks. So you kind of have to. So you kind of have to wonder, like, was that one of the reasons why that the Robert Jr. wasn't traded? It was because the price tag was too high. That Guess was asking a lot for him. So that's kind of interesting there. Yeah, interesting that they didn't trade Tachman either, which I was a little surprised that they didn't to try to get something for him. But I guess maybe Getz thinks that he's probably going to leave after this season anyway. But even still, you try to get something for him. So, but yeah, it's kind of like interesting, in the sense that the White Sox. I mean, I don't know, but that's why you saw. I'm sure Benintendi, but that contract we still got a lot of money due on that contract.
I think 2 more years after this year. I believe 2 more years after this year. So it's tough, even though it's a bargaining deal compared to some of the players are making. Yeah, you weren't going to get much for Benintendi either. So maybe this will be a blessing in disguise, at least for the rest of the season for the White Sox. I know if they win 1 or 2 games this weekend against the Anaheim Angels, they'll tie and eventually surpass their win total from a year ago. Maybe some of those veterans will be here to help guide some of those young guys, progress them in their progress just a little bit more. When I'm talking about the Chase Maidras, the Miguel Vargases, and the Josh Rojases, and the Costa Montgomery, who's really been on fire ever since he's been in the White Sox uniform. His offense is starting to pick up. Just for me, for the White Sox, this is the time. Shout out Billy Joel. No, I'm not going to sing it, but this is the time reevaluate some of the positions for next year. Is Miguel Vargas going to be your first baseman moving forward, or will he play third base? Is Chase Maidras going to be your starting shortstop? Which I don't think so. I think he's better at second base. I think he'll eventually end up. Will Chase Maidras be a second baseman going forward? Is Costa Montgomery that guy shortstop? So far, yes. So these questions have to be answered between now and the end of the season. You get those guys plenty of at bats, and also too Edgar Carroll, Cal Teal, who's going to be that number 1, number 2 catcher. You got to get both those guys in the lineup somehow every day. So those questions will start to take place. Well, answers to those questions will start to take place between now and the end of the season. The White Sox will have to spend a little bit of money this offseason because you expect to take another step next year. Some of those questions that should be answered for next year will start right now.
It's going to be very interesting what Chris Getz does, because I think I'm sure he knew they wasn't going to get that much for Houser, so I think he only got like a couple of minor league guys for him. So but Minnesota though they're getting rid of pretty much everybody. So I think it was definitely a fire sale for Minnesota. I think another team that kind of didn't really do too much. Detroit, they kind of stood pat for the most part. They've won 4 in a row. They really didn't have to do too much. They did beef up their middle relief rotation. So now the Mets, of course, they got swept by the Padres this week. So we'll see how they look against the Giants. But that whole thing is going to be interesting too as well. So for me, I think that kind of. I know they're going all in. The Padres are, I should say. The Dodgers didn't really do too much. I guess they're trying to wait and hope that they won 2 out of 3 in Cincy. They're still out east against the Rays this week. We'll see if a lot of their guys can come back. I guess is what they're banking on, especially with Shota now. Of course, he's been banged up. We may not see him pitch much the rest of the season. But it's going to be interesting though the rest of the how these new look teams will fare in their new digs.
I know we run out of against about wrap up with this. I like what the Mets did with that bullpen. We talked about it on the show. They didn't get it started, but I like the way they beefed up their bullpen. Brad Housley from St. Louis, and of course Tyler Rogers from San Francisco. That's huge, especially shoring up their middle relief. And one of those guys can fill in that closest spot if Edwin Diaz decides to gaff it up again. And the New York Yankees, we talked about them again. Ryan McMahon from Colorado Rockies. I know Anthony Volpe's been struggling so far, especially with his defense, but I think he's going to be okay. But they picked up Austin, not AC Slater from the White Sox, and also too they picked up Bednar, as you mentioned, the closer from the Pittsburgh Pirates to beef up their bullpen. So I like what the Yankees did in terms of depth, but they better get back Aaron Judge soon, because if not, the Yankees in trouble. I know John Carlos saying he hit a home run yesterday in their series finale, went over Tampa Bay, but Aaron Judge is not back. The Yankees will not take that next step and making that deep playoff run like they did a year ago.
I think the Phillies also definitely they found their closer in Yohan Duran from Minnesota. He was part of that fire sale in Minnesota, so I think he definitely beats up that bullpen. Being the reliever for sure. So I know he has a 2 ERA this year with Minnesota, 6-4 with 1.18. So I think they definitely answer the questions there as well for their bullpen. And look, they were in on the Luis Robert sweepstakes. I think they kind of like, you know what, was it probably, I'm sure, we'll probably hear that the guest was probably asking a lot for them. So I'm sure that's probably why they kind of moved on. So it'll be interesting to see here. But yeah, like I said, these new look teams, we'll see, going this stretch run. Of course, we're in August now, so we got about 7 or 8 weeks left in the regular season. So I'm interested to see how these teams fare.
Yep, it will be interesting to see. As you mentioned, we have a lot of sports this weekend, minus the NFL. The NFL preseason will start next weekend, but you have a lot of baseball, and we'll have that the Speedway MLB game between the Braves and the Reds. We'll talk about that on Monday, and when we get back on Monday, the preparation for Week 1 of the NFL preseason will begin. So we'll be digging into a lot of that as well. Of course, as I mentioned, I'll be out at Bears Family Fest on Sunday. I'll have my bird's eye view of the team of the workout coming up on the show on Monday. Yours truly is supposed to be out there on Saturday tomorrow for Cubs and Orioles. So we'll see what they do with the Ryne Sandberg tribute, because all the Cubs players in tomorrow's game are supposed to wear Ryne Sandberg jerseys in honor of him and his legacy. So pretty busy weekend for your boy.
I'll say I definitely have a report on that coming up on Monday. With that said, you can find my Keena McGee on the Twitter X and Keena McGee on IG.
You can follow your Shirley Sidney Brown on the Twitter X and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80, SIDKID80, SIDKID80. Be sure to download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. Please subscribe to our podcast. We are located at Ward Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We're on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, give Ward Media a follow. Please give Ward Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Be sure to catch Second City Sports live and live in color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Be sure to catch Second City Sports live and live in color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And feel free to leave us a comment. As our new friend Oliver Chapman. This is my first time watching your show. Very impressed. Keep up the great work. Oh, thank you, Oliver. Like I said, tell your friends about us. Tell us to watch us. Subscribe to us, and also they can catch the replays. If you missed parts of our show, don't worry. You can catch replays anytime, anywhere on Sports Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels. It's right there for you. You can catch our show, Sean Sierra Sports, the Smoke Fellows, What's Up Cuz, and so much more. We got a lot of great content coming up for this coming football season, so you can catch it anytime, anywhere on Sports Chicago's YouTube channels.
And we will provide.
Of course, Sid, as Sid said, enjoy the rest of enjoy baseball. I think the Sky, if you're the WBA, I think the Sky play tomorrow. So I'll check that real quick. I'll check that real quick. But we'll play tonight against the Golden State Valkyries. You can catch it on ION at 6:30 if that tickles your fancy, I guess. but even still, for Sid, I'm LaKeena. Enjoy all the sports. Enjoy the weather. If you're going to Lollapalooza, be safe out there, folks. Don't do anything.
Oh, yes, that's right. Oh, so it's going to be a funky smell this weekend. I'm just saying.
Well,
I'm going to duck right past it, too.
The good news is that it's not supposed to be that hot. It's supposed to be nice and cool. It's gonna be the 70s all weekend, so you won't smell it. It shouldn't smell too much there. I'm just saying. So, but even still, just be safe out there. Be good to each other. For Sid, I'm LaKeena. It's been Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago, and we'll see you guys on Monday.
Go Sox! Holla!